conflict of interest by anyone? Everybody's okay? Okay. Approval of the agenda for Tuesday, May the 25th has been presented to you. Any questions on the agenda? One item only. Adoption of the minutes of the planning board meeting on Monday, May 3rd. Oh.
We need a mover and a seconder.
Oh, sorry. I can move back to the agenda then. Do I have a mover and a seconder for, moved by Bobby Durong, second by Basil Hamley, that the agenda for today's meeting be approved as presented? All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carried. I imagine you're in favor, Councillor McCabe?
Yes.
Okay. That was 5-0. Adoption of the minutes of the planning board meeting on Monday, May the 3rd, 2021. Got a chance to review the minutes. Does anybody have any questions or concerns in regard to the minutes? Having none, do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Chris Fournier, seconded by? By Bobby Kenny. Discussion, all those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carried. Good afternoon, Shalyn.
Hi, guys.
Business arising from the minutes. We only have one item of business to consider this afternoon, and that is a reconsideration request for the Angus Drive Lot 40, PID 41, 91, 43, and 413 St. Peter's Road, PID number 41, 91, 35. We have Mr. Alex Forbes, Manager of Planning.
I think you might need to speak up. I
Oh.
think just for the volume outside.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have Mr. Alex Forbes, Manager of our Planning and Heritage Department, to bring us the news on this particular request. Floor is yours, Mr. Forbes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The reason why we're here this evening is that the council did make a decision on this application on April 26th, and they denied this application. And the applicant, Mel's Convenience, or Dan McIsaac, Jeff Doucette, actually, one of his employees, actually filled out the documentation, but they actually did file a request with IRAC and a reconsideration at the same time, and that's kind of a standard course. So I'll just go over a little bit in regard to what reconsideration is, and then the staff role in that. So Laurel Palmer Thompson, you asked about her earlier on, why she doesn't do it. On a reconsideration, the same planner can't do the reconsideration because there's a flaw in there that maybe that planner did. It's you know, they may not see it as readily as someone else. So I've been elected to do the overview on this reconsideration. So that brings us back. So it's been both appealed, it's under reconsideration. There's a report here this evening. I'll go over the components that were brought to our attention from the applicant. I'll go over, just in case somebody's watching in. The original request was to amend Appendix G, the zoning bylaw for Angus Drive, Lot 40, from single detached residential R1L zone to mixed use commercial MUC zone, and 413 St. Peter's Road from low-density residential R2 zone to mixed-use commercial zone, and to amend Appendix A, future land use map of the official plan, for Angus Drive, Lot 40, and 413 St. Peter's Road from mature neighborhood to village center commercial. The applicants are requesting to consolidate both Lot 40 and 413 into the existing Mel's parcel. So that was the original request. So that brings us up to the reconsideration. So on reconsideration, like the criteria for reconsideration tends to be quite narrow. We hopefully don't have to, reconsideration isn't just to bring back a decision that somebody, the aggrieved party, didn't like the answer to. It's usually tied to an IRAC appeal. And the reason that it was put into the zoning bylaw, so when you're reviewing this today, think that if you're at IRAC, because this will go to IRAC, that if I was at IRAC, am I hearing anything tonight or whatever I'm going to bring up, if I were at IRAC, would I think the process was run fairly and that all the information was conveyed at the right time? Or do I think there was something that happened as a part of that process that when it gets to IRAC, that they may focus their attention on and I would say overturn, but may have concern with the process that was provided by the city of Charlottetown. So there's 2 stages to the reconsideration request, and then so initially, and that's why we're here tonight, is you need to pass a threshold test, and then to pass this test, the applicant must provide sufficient particulars in the request to show that the request falls within the stated grounds in the zoning bylaw. So in the zoning bylaw, it says council may review, rescind, change, or vary any order or decision made by the development officer or by council, provided that new material facts or evidence not available at the time of the initial order or decision has come to light. A material change of circumstances occurred since the initial order or decision. There's clear doubt to the correctness or order of the decision in the first instance. And if after receiving recommendation from the planning board, council determines that the request passes the threshold test, the lot consolidation request will be heard pursuant to 3115 of the bylaw, and as well as the rezoning components. Alternatively, if council decides that the threshold test is not satisfied under this section, then the appeal to IRAC will proceed. So in the package is the letter from Mr. Jeff Doucette. He lays out in a page and a half as to his concerns in regard to the process. I focused on a couple of elements of his letter, but all of his letter is relevant, but I zeroed in on a couple of them. In his letter, he indicates that the applicant contends that during the public meeting, and this is all like if we're going back to the night of the public meeting, March 23rd, was it clear to council and the area residents that in the these components of the application should have been known or would have been a concern if they had been known. So he's indicating that through discussion with the province that they contend that without the Angus driveway access, the access off of St. Peter's Road will not be safe. And he says there's not sufficient distance for a vehicle to safely exit our parking lot and change lanes, entering the roundabout, and proceed in an easterly direction. The pedestrian crossing is also located in an area where vehicles turning out of Mel's may not be paying attention to crossing pedestrians while trying to change lanes. If the back access road is permitted, the safety concerns brought up by the province would be greatly reduced or eliminated. So that was one of their more significant components in their letter. Staff looked at that request, and if you think of the access in front of Mel's, the concern for Mel's is that if the 2 roundabouts are put in, there's going to be a median between the 2 roundabouts and no ability to make a left turn movement if you're heading out of town on St. Peter's Road. So vehicles will have to go up to McWilliams, they'll have to come around, they'll have to go into Mel's, they'll have to go back into Angus, and then back out again. So without the Angus Street access. But Mel's is concerned about getting people in and out if you're leaving town. From his point of view as a business person, it's much easier to go into the roundabout, get onto Angus, and make a right turn lane, or turn into his operation, and it's easier for people to get in and out of there. In my report, I somewhat allude to the fact that the public meeting, this is a unique application, and there's 2 people involved in this application. And at the public meeting, it's Mr. McIsaac who's making the application. But Mr. McIsaac is making the application because of the roundabout. The roundabout is going to impact him, and so the province is proposing the roundabout. Mr. McIsaac is the applicant, but at the public meeting, we focused a lot on the applicant because he is actually the person making the application. He wanted to rezone those properties to MUC. There was a lot of discussion on local traffic for Angus Drive. All of that was addressed. And the province was there to answer questions, but since it wasn't really the applicant's or the province's application, they didn't do like a full presentation. They gave a little bit of an overview of how the 2 were somewhat interrelated. But what the province didn't bring out that if this is up to you folks, but it was not clear if the Angus Drive access was not provided. All traffic that's leaving Mel's, heading back into Charlottetown, all of that traffic, which is fairly significant at that location, is all going to be heading to that roundabout. And it's a very short distance from that access to Mel's into the roundabout. And I hate speaking on behalf of the province, but they don't have sufficient traveling distance for cars to get back out to St. Peter's Road, get traveling along and then decide about these lane changes or the crosswalk, or if depending on where you're going, maybe you're going to take the inside lane of the roundabout heading back into town. You're going to go around it to go back out of town. So there's a lot happening very quickly from the access from Mel's, once the barrier is there, back into the roundabout. And there's a lot of moving parts in there, particularly if all traffic is funneled to the roundabout. So was something that's up to you folks, whether you thought that you had sufficient information that night. The province didn't speak a whole lot on that. They indicated that it was interrelated. I talked about the median, and again, so we are aware that this request has been made before by Mel's to get out to Angus. And yeah, I think the residents were familiar with Mr. McIsaac, had wanted to get out to Angus before. But again, this application, I can't speak for Mr. McIsaac either, but it's the roundabout that's really driving this because of the impact it's going to have on the St. Peter's Road access. So, Mr. McIsaac was there to respond to his interest, and hopefully that his people that use his operation would be able to enter and exit his property safely. So again, it's the traffic and safety implications that will result from this scenario, and the applicant now contends that neither the public or council were fully aware at the public meeting. The council has referenced, or the applicant has referenced in the letter of reconsideration the impacts that will occur if all traffic is exiting from Mel's and is directed towards the roundabout. Province has confirmed that they agree with the applicant's assessment of the proposed impacts to the roundabout if the Angus driveway is not created. And this is the other significant component. Moreover, the province is of a firm opinion that the roundabout simply cannot proceed without the Angus Drive access. And I don't think that was clear the night of the public meeting. And then, so that's the first test. And staff are indicating that, again, it's up to this body and council, but the new material facts, we think that is a new material fact. And then when we went over the record at the public meeting, it said, Councillor Tweel asked staff whether the proposed roundabout would proceed if the Angus Drive access and rezoning application request was not approved. Laurel answered that question and indicated that the roundabout would proceed if Mel's rezoning application was denied. Again, and so when I reviewed that, I indicate Ms. Thompson based her answer on previous discussion she had on the application with the province and the applicant. And again, I understand how Laurel came to that conclusion, but she shouldn't have answered that question. She should have deferred that to the province, because there was a lot of moving parts on this. Because there's three people involved in this. There's Mr. McIsaac, there's the province, and then there's the city. So, Laurel, was under the understanding, but that wasn't clarified, so everybody just sailed along. So Laurel, rightly or wrongly, kind of left the impression that the two were independent of each other. And now what we're hearing is that they're not independent of each other because one is dependent on the other, and without one, the other won't happen. So on those two grounds for appeal, which I think this is the first one staff has supported, a material change of circumstances occurred since the initial order or decision. So again, we think on both A and B that this application meets that test. So, you folks are a recommending body to council. It's up to you folks as to which way you want to rule on this. You'll give a recommendation to council, but it'll ultimately be up to council as to whether they want to reconsider the application. If they reconsider it, they'll start the process all over again. Residents will be notified. There'll be another public meeting, and all of these additional facts, if you feel that they're relevant, will be conveyed to the public, and in particular that the roundabout won't happen. And again, the province has been in the press recently on that fact. Somebody called me and said, what's going on, and I called the province, and they made it very clear that they're indicating that it just can't proceed without the Angus Drive access. So my recommendation is that recommend to reconsider the rezoning application for lot 40 Angus Drive, 413 St. Peter's Road, and the lot consolidation of 419 St. Peter's Road. in accordance with the council reconsideration process as prescribed. And I should have shown you that my little, Ellen had this all up and ready for me. But this is what came in from the applicant with their reconsideration letter. So that's what they're showing. You know, again, it's just, and when I'm talking about the distance that is of concern, one of the accesses is right here, and you can see when you come out of Mel's and you're heading to the roundabout, here's the 2 lanes, and here's the pedestrian crossings. There's a lot going on from this access point. Some traffic will do that, and they'll use Angus, and when they split, it won't put as much pressure on it. But if all traffic is coming out of this access point, heading back through the roundabout, that's going east. No, that's going west. This is going back into town. That there's a lot of opportunity for drivers to be distracted as they're trying to get in. Depending on the lane change, if they want to go around the roundabout and head back out of town, they've got to be in this lane, and then you have the pedestrians crossing here. So that was what the applicant had indicated that they had a concern for. So I think that's, what happened there? So that's the only real drawing that came in with the reconsideration request. So again, just staff are recommending that the planning board consider supporting a reconsideration on this application. And I'll leave it at that. If there's any questions, I'm here to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Forbes. Before we move on to questions from the planning board, I wanted to note that Councillor Yankoff arrived at 4:35. Thank you. So,
And my apologies for being late.
no problem. No problem. Questions for Mr. Forbes? Questions for Mr. Forbes? Councillor McKay.
have some questions, so I can start them and
Sure.
you know, before we even ask questions about that, I noticed in your report, Alex, it says if council determines to hold a public meeting. So you're saying that they will definitely have a public meeting if council is to approve a reconsideration?
That's what's in the process that's laid out in the zoning bylaw, and that would be similar to what has been done in the past, is to have a public meeting. And the key thing is twofold. Council needs to understand the merits of an application, but so do the public, right? So if you want to do the reconsideration, some of you folks may know that by now, you've read the press, but the point is it's for the public that are all impacted by this roundabout. So if you feel that we should have a reconsideration, I mean, it's up to council, but it says in the reconsideration process, notify the residents of a public meeting and go back out to the public and then explain these. If you feel that these were additional or new information, then depending on the input you get back at that time, may be the same, it may not, but then you would go back as a council and make a determination whether you think that that you should stick with your original resolution or whether you should change based upon the information, not only what is presented here tonight, but whatever feedback you might get from the residents at that future public meeting. Because if they go, well, it's hard to say whether people will be concerned if the roundabout isn't built in that neighborhood.
And just in our last reconsideration, I don't recall it going that way. It was more that they came in and justified. So I'm just making sure that if this does get approved for reconsideration, that there will in fact be a public meeting process. But, you know, I looked at the application, I read it, tried to fit it into those 3 thresholds, and I believe that this is a provincial issue. This is a provincial problem. It's unfortunate when Laurel spoke and answered and said the question that someone didn't jump in and give the other side of it. I feel that safety was addressed, maybe not as much as they are now coming back with the second time to indicate, but I mean, come on. I think they were very presumptuous in the fact of the original application, thinking City was going to approve this application. There was notices in the paper after we rejected it the next day, which tells you that I think everybody thought that it was just a no-brainer and we were going to accept this, which it went 8-1 and then 5-4 after we learned about this roundabout project. It's still an application to rezone for commercial. I know in his letter that we've seen, he's indicated he'd be open to parking, but when we're reconsidering, we have to be reconsidering the original application, which is commercial property. I was there on Friday night. I was saying before this meeting, the place is a zoo. It's dangerous. I don't even think this is going to fix the problem of what happens at Mel's based on the number of traffic people in. This little exit out on Angus Drive is not going to fix the solution of what's happening in that particular area. It's just, it's not, you have to actually go on a Friday night when it's 20 degrees and sit and watch what happens there. And it's great for business. And God bless the business owner. I'm not trying to take away from what his point is, but it's not safe. And I don't even think a roundabout's going to make this safe. Roundabout's going to help with flow of traffic on St. Peter's Road. Again, St. Peter's Road is the provincial highway. I think that there has to be some solutions. But as far as looking at this particular application, I feel, for me personally, there was an opportunity for this information to come out. It didn't. Do I want to reconsider this property for a commercial rezone? I know my residents don't. I have to be here to represent my residents, so for me, I'm not going to be supporting reconsideration.
Thank you, Councillor McCabe. Councillor McCabe, on the issue of the original application was to rezone the present R1, R2 lot to a commercial lot. Mr. Forbes, can council on their own initiation, or can they change that designation of that lot from the request to be a commercial one to be in one of parking only? Like, can council do that?
Council can do that, but it's kind of a side element to
Yes,
this.
it's not part of the
first
major.
thing is that, do you want to reconsider it? Because
Yeah.
he can ask for a rezoning, or he can do something later to deal
Yeah.
with that. And he has put in his letter, by the way, that he's prepared to do that. But what you're here tonight is to
Yes.
determine, should we even reconsider it?
The thresholds.
If you go to the public meeting, if you get to the public meeting stage, you could indicate as councillors that you're not even going to contemplate it, or you could ask staff the question, can we rezone it to parking, downzone it from what he requested? And the answer to that would be yes.
That's a call at second base. We're just
Exactly.
considering a call at first base here tonight.
And maybe, Mr. Chair, just
Yeah.
one second, just getting back to Councilor McCabe, I just wanted to find the provision in here. So in the zoning bylaw, that there's a procedure, but there's also a policy that goes with reconsideration. I want to make sure that I'd answer your question. So in the policy that accompanies this, it says council will determine whether the request meets the threshold test for reconsideration. If council determines not to reconsider the application, then the development officer will notify the applicant. But the next sentence, if council determines to reconsider the decision, a development officer will send notice to the applicant, the developer, the affected property owners within 100 meters of the boundaries of the affected lot, explaining the basis upon which council will reconsider the decision, notifying them of their opportunity to make written submissions to council on the request, the date of which the written submissions will happen. So I just want to be clear that...
And that next sentence, if council determines to hold a public meeting
Right.
to receive oral submissions.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying is, will it definitely be?
Well, and again, that would be up to council, but we would just indicate, here's the policy, and you can deal with it whatever way you so
Yeah.
desire. But I would suspect that in light of the fact that we're here about, do you think that the public is as fully aware of the moving parts, meaning that issue on the roadway, the access from Mel's into the roundabout, and the fact that the province won't build it? So if you think that they're not fully aware, then that clearly is the whole purpose of the public meeting, is to hear from them, to see if they still feel the same way, or whether they feel differently with this new information.
Councillor McCabe, I think our council, our experience with council when it comes to call a public meeting or not, when asked to do so, it's pretty rare, pretty rare.
No, I just wanted to
Yeah,
make sure
I
it was
understand
on
what you're saying,
record.
yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, the err on the side of caution, so to speak. It's not good optics to say, no, we're not going to have a public meeting.
No, I'm
Yeah.
quite aware.
Yeah.
And the other thing with what you were just saying before that was, as far as are public aware, I think it's been very clear, because it's been all over the news, that this is now the result of our decision. And as the council that represents this area, I've had a few, for sure, residents have reached out to say, we'd be concerned if we didn't have a roundabout on Angus Drive. But I've still had more that are more concerned with the entrance and exit on Angus Drive. Keep that noted.
And you may come to the same conclusion at council, but again, maybe just think about this way, and this is the way I think about it, that if you were at IRAC and you weren't a part of this, they just review the record, right? So if they reviewed the record, would they think, ooh, is this a concern? I don't know whether they will or won't, but that's exactly why this process was put in. This process was put in to see if we thought something would be uncovered at IRAC that they would dig in on or have a concern with, that we could possibly remedy that issue internally before it gets to them. So that's why it's there.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Forbes. Councillor Yankoff.
Thank you, Chair. I think we've really only ever been, as a council over this term, one huge reconsideration, which was the Trainer Drive.
Correct, yep.
So when I look at this, and I know how important it was for us to look at, did I receive new information since the public meeting? I would have to answer that yes, I have information that I wasn't aware of until the province came in that second time. And I was not aware that the roundabout would not proceed if we did not support the Angus Drive application. So tonight I will support going back to council for reconsideration. And at that time, I will appeal to my fellow councillors for us to, as we proceed to public consultation and start the process again, to ensure that the applicant honors his suggestion in his letter, which would be to look at the zoning as parking versus commercial, and also hopefully work with the residents that are concerned on Angus and try and meet their needs at the same time. So that's where I'm at with things, and thank you, by the way, for your report.
Oh, thank you.
It's very clear.
Thank you, Councillor Yankoff. Rosemary, you're on the line there. I didn't want to forget you. Do you have any comment on the issue?
No, I mean, I think
Okay.
the major, other than that, the major new piece of information coming forward is that the roundabout would not proceed without the Angus Drive exit. I think that is new information for sure.
Thank you, Rosemary. Anyone else in the room here would like to comment one way or the other?
Mr. Chair,
Chris?
my question is, so the government is expropriating homes along there, can they do that to that lane as well at the end of the day? Going into Mel's and put a street in there?
Oh, yeah.
They could.
Yeah, but they can, but it's not Mel's that is the issue. It's the, the Mel's, I think the province would have been prepared to buy all of that Mel's land, but you'd still have to get some kind of an accommodation as to how that lane gets out. It's the residents I think it's to the north there, it's the residents around it that are, the most impacted, and they're the ones that are raising the largest concerns. Now, the property on the corner is going to disappear, at least one and maybe two,
Just one.
yeah, so there's one will have to be purchased for the roundabout itself. So, again, it's a big project and it is impacting, that intersection. But I'm just reading this out of the media. What Steve Yo's comment in the media. In the absence of this is going to be right in, right out, and that barrier. You're not going to be able to make that left turn into Angus in the future. You'll have to go down to McWilliams, get into that roundabout, and then come back. So, but anyways, that can be explained at the time of the public meeting. These technical issues, I got involved in that in council. I'm sort of the spokesman for whether it's Mr. McIsaac, who has an interest, the province, who has an interest, and then the residents who have an interest. So I try to convey things as accurately as possible, but if we have the public meeting, they should be there to explain in detail. Don't rely on me, but what their concerns is with the functioning of that roundabout without that Angus street access.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Anyone at all? Going once, going twice, going three times. Okay, do we have a mover for one way or the other? Mover and a seconder?
I'll move that we send it to council for reconsideration.
Thank you, Shallon. That's it's been moved by Shallon, seconded by Bobby, that on to council for reconsideration. Do you want to cite the rationales, the thresholds, or do you want to leave that out of it?
You can just leave that out. The report
Sure.
will go with it, to council the way
Sure.
that it is, and then council will pick it up from here in regard
Okay.
to, but they'll know that you've endorsed the reconsideration. And
Any-
it's right in the recommendation, subject to that section of the bylaw, the reconsideration process.
And the public, okay.
No, this body doesn't pick the public
That's right,
hearing.
that's right. I understand, yeah. Okay,
Chair.
okay, Julie?
Should the recommendation from this be included, the threshold and the reasons for reconsideration? Or should, if this board recommends to planning that we reconsider, you had a good point when you mentioned, should it include the reasons?
Which thresholds did they
Yeah.
meet?
Should that-
And I think Alex, Mr. Forbes is saying that we could attach this report that we have in front of us tonight
Okay.
as the threshold. Is that what
Correct.
you mean?
The council's gonna look at the same material, the same as
That-
you did
that we
tonight.
have here.
It's just that you folks have looked at it, you agree that it should be reconsidered.
Yeah.
And with your endorsement, council will look at it the same and say, do we want to reconsider? But you'll read the same report.
I just wanted to just make sure that the residents had all the clarity as well.
Yeah, good point.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on the proposed resolution? Okay, all those in favor? All those
Aye.
opposed? Motion carried, and I think we have 3, 6, 7, so the motion carries 6-1, correct? Okay, thank you, folks, for that. Moving on to the next item, introduction of new business. Any new business to be conducted tonight? Having none, I will look for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor McCabe, second by Councillor Yankoff, that we stand adjourned. Thank you very much, folks.
And
Thank you.
Councilor Duffy,
Yes.
it is 7-1 because Rosemary's on the phone.
Yeah, I had Rosemary, and so there's 7 of us. There's 7, so it's 6-1.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, I was up working on
Three
you now. I
and
was
three.
on you.
Not many times I'm right on the numbers.
Yeah, my